Everything you believe about winning, arguments, influence, power, is built on a lie. You've been trained to think the loudest voice leads, the sharpest tongue wins, the one who explains the most convinces the most. But Nietzsche knew something darker, something far more dangerous. Silence isn't absence, it's a weapon. Words reveal too much. They expose your thoughts, your fears, your intent. But silence conceals. It disorients. Silence makes others unravel while you stay composed. This isn't about eloquence or education. This is about presence without explanation, command without noise, power without sound. And if you learn to master it, you'll outsmart anyone. In every crowded room, there's always noise, too much of it. People talk over each other in a desperate attempt to be seen, to be heard, to matter. Boardrooms filled with empty jargon, political debates packed with rehearsed aggression, social feeds drowning in people shouting their thoughts into the void. And yet, in all that sound, nothing of value is actually said. Everyone is trying to win the room with words, but they don't realize the true power lies with the one who says the least. The silent figure sitting back, observing everything, speaking nothing, letting the others expose themselves. This is the person who controls the room. Those who talk too much reveal too much. Every word you speak is a thread unraveling your strategy. Every explanation you offer becomes ammunition in someone else's hands. The moment you open your mouth to justify yourself, you admit vulnerability. The more you talk, the less they respect you, because explanation isn't power, it's reaction. Those who seek to convince are already disadvantaged. They're operating from beneath, trying to pull others up to their level, hoping their arguments will earn them space. But Nietzsche understood something far more lethal. Silence isn't passive, it's tactical. It's not the absence of thought, it's the embodiment of control. Silence is a presence, it's a tension, it's the energy in the room that makes others speak just to break it. It unsettles the weak. It forces the confident to second-guess themselves. It flips the power structure entirely. You don't have to be right if you're unreadable. You don't have to speak if your presence already demands attention. In a world addicted to noise, silence becomes high currency. It's rare, it's dangerous, and it's effective. Picture a negotiation table. One person lays out facts, figures, logical arguments, then pauses, waiting for agreement. The other just looks at them, says nothing, stays composed. Let the silence grow. Suddenly the first speaker feels uncomfortable, starts clarifying, over-explaining, stumbling into insecurity. Who has the power now? The one who talks less. Picture an argument. Someone is shouting, calling you out, trying to trigger you into a response. But you don't flinch, you don't react, you just look at them. That silence is heavier than any insult. It says, "You are not worth my energy." It's restraint weaponized. Now imagine a room full of influencers, all trying to go viral by yelling louder than the last. TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, they all reward volume. But the one clip that hits the hardest, the one with stillness, the one with pause, the one with a man staring into the camera, not blinking, not speaking, for 10 seconds too long. That tension, that discomfort, that weight, it hooks people. That's silence as dominance. And Nietzsche knew it long before algorithms did. He understood that words are tools, but also risks, that the wise man controls his voice like a blade, drawn only when needed, never for show. You must stop trying to win by speaking more. That's a losing game. People don't remember the noise. They remember the silence that made them feel something. The moment someone stopped speaking and started listening. The second someone held a pause longer than expected, forcing the world to lean in. This is where real psychological power lives, in the spaces between words, in what is not said, in what others project into the vacuum you've created. Because when you speak less, others start narrating your silence. They build theories, they fill the gaps, they assume depth, mystery, control. Even if none of it exists, your silence becomes their mirror. It reflects their fears, their doubt, their admiration, and while they spin stories, you stay centered, still, unmoved. That's the Nietzsche method. Not to dominate through volume, but through presence. To speak rarely and only with precision. To make your words cost something. To use them like currency, not confetti. So stop wasting your power on compulsive commentary. Stop jumping into debates where nothing is at stake. Stop feeling the need to explain yourself to people who already made up their minds. Let silence do your work for you. Let it press on them like gravity. Let it make them wonder. The world is addicted to speed, but silence slows everything down. It creates weight. It creates impact. It creates fear. And that fear turns into respect. You want to outsmart someone. Say less. Watch more. Let them speak first, second, third. Then dismantle everything with one line or no line at all. That is presence. That is influence. That is Nietzsche's dangerous method. In every conversation, in every power struggle, the loudest voice may win attention, but the quietest mind wins control. Remember, those who talk too much reveal too much, and those who seek to convince are already admitting defeat. Be the one who doesn't need to be heard to be known. Be the one who says nothing and still changes everything. Nietzsche's philosophy wasn't just about rebellion. It was about transformation, the evolution of the individual into something greater, something beyond the grasp of the herd. He called it the Mensch, the overman. Not a tyrant, not a hero, but a being who had mastered himself so completely that the noise of the world could no longer touch him. The Mensch doesn't seek validation. He doesn't chase applause. And he certainly doesn't waste breath proving his worth to those too blind to see it. He is silent not because he lacks something to say, but because he no longer needs to say it. This silence isn't cowardice, it's power. A weapon forged in discipline, carved out of solitude, and sharpened by clarity. Nietzsche saw the average man as desperate to be heard, trapped in chatter, defending his ego in every sentence. But the one who evolves, the one who transcends, stops playing that game. He doesn't argue because he doesn't need to. He doesn't speak because his presence says more than his voice ever could. True victory isn't winning the argument. It's never entering one. Think about the moments in your life where you were overshadowed, talked over, interrupted by louder voices that didn't carry more wisdom, just more noise. You remember the burn of it. The frustration of knowing you had something worth saying, but realizing the world rewards volume, not value. Nietzsche understood that pain. He understood the loneliness of restraint, the deep ache of silence not yet mastered, the agony of withholding when your soul demands you shout. But he also knew what lay on the other side: peace, clarity, power. When you stop trying to be heard, you start hearing. When you stop reacting, you start seeing. And when you stop speaking, you begin to command, not through fear, but through undeniable presence. The Mensch walks through life like a storm waiting to happen. He doesn't rage, doesn't plead. He simply exists with such quiet intensity that others adjust around him. His silence doesn't signal absence, it creates gravity. Others lean in, they listen harder, they wonder. They assume intelligence, strength, danger. That is Nietzsche's brilliance. He shows you that becoming powerful isn't about external control, it's about internal mastery. You do not defeat others by overpowering them, you defeat them by becoming immovable in yourself. The noisy world cannot shake what it cannot touch. But getting there is painful. It means enduring situations where you could have won with words but chose stillness. It means being misunderstood, underestimated, even mocked. The Mensch is not loud because he has already overcome the need to prove. He has buried his weakness and silence became its tombstone. He doesn't engage in every conflict because most conflicts are beneath him. He doesn't interrupt because what others are saying doesn't threaten him. He doesn't react because nothing they do can unbalance him. This is ultra silence. Not repression, but refinement. A silence so sharp it cuts through noise without ever raising its voice. So if you've ever been the quiet one in the room, the one who knew more but said less, the one who held back because it wasn't worth it, understand this: you were not weak. You were on the path. The world will try to drag you into its noise, make you perform, make you explain. But Nietzsche's method is to refuse, to stay still while they flail, to be so composed that chaos bends around you, to be so silent that even the wind slows to hear your thoughts. That's not just philosophy, that's power. That's the silence that rewrites reality without ever raising its voice. Silence isn't neutral, it's psychological warfare. In the world of social dynamics, silence has weight, and that weight crushes those who aren't ready to carry it. When someone goes quiet in a conversation, especially when it's unexpected, the room shifts, the energy changes, the air thickens. The speaker, once confident, suddenly stumbles. They repeat themselves. They search for your reaction. They fill the silence with apologies, clarifications, contradictions. Why? Because silence triggers insecurity. It creates a vacuum, and nature hates a vacuum. Social psychology shows that most people are deeply uncomfortable with silence, especially in conflict or persuasion scenarios. When met with no reaction, no nod, no smile, no words, people begin to project. They assume judgment. They assume disagreement. They assume threat. The silence becomes a mirror, and whatever fear is buried inside them rises to the surface. They begin to unravel not because you said something, but because you didn't. Studies show that prolonged silence in conversation causes cognitive dissonance in the speaker. It destabilizes them. They try to re-stabilize the interaction by saying more, often revealing more than they intended. This is where silence becomes a weapon. It disarms the confident and exposes the insecure. Picture a heated argument. Someone throws accusations, raises their voice, waiting for you to fight back, but you don't. You just stare, no reaction, no defense. Just calm. That moment becomes unbearable for them. They start to crack under the weight of their own aggression. They misinterpret your silence as superiority, or worse, disdain. They lose control, not because you overpowered them, but because they were alone in their noise. Or picture a job interview where the candidate answers a question and you pause, just watching. They'll almost always keep talking, backtracking, oversharing, filling the gap with their own anxiety. Silence presses on the psyche like gravity. It makes people reveal their weakness in real time. In relationships, silence after a betrayal isn't just absence. It's power. It forces the other person to face themselves, to replay their words, to guess your thoughts. And in guessing, they often confess, because silence destabilizes them more than anger ever could. This is why the most emotionally intelligent people, the most dangerous minds, speak last. They speak less. They don't interrupt. They let others show their cards while keeping theirs close. And when they finally do speak, the silence that preceded their words makes those words feel heavier, more intentional, more final. That's the psychology of silence as weapon. It's not about avoiding confrontation. It's about controlling it. You don't need to speak to dominate. You only need to hold your center while others lose theirs. And in that stillness, you win. Not by force, but by letting them defeat themselves. In a high-stakes boardroom buzzing with overlapping voices, heated debates erupt around quarterly losses and fractured strategies. Everyone's scrambling for attention, interrupting, defending, performing intellect with buzzwords and bravado. But at the far end of the table sits one executive, calm, silent, unfazed. She watches, says nothing. Her silence isn't passive. It's electric. Every now and then, someone glances her way, unconsciously seeking her reaction, but she offers none. Then, at the end of the chaos, as the room simmers in exhaustion, she speaks, just once. A clear, precise decision. No debate, no pitch, just certainty. And the room falls quiet. The argument ends not with consensus, but with gravity. In another world, a social circle sits around a cafe table, spiraling into drama. One friend is venting about betrayal, another interrupts, offering therapy speak and unsolicited advice. The tension builds, voices rise, and the emotional noise peaks into chaos. Meanwhile, one person sits silently, sipping their drink, making no attempt to contribute. They nod once, maybe. Their eyes scan the scene, not cold, but detached. They aren't disengaged, they're assessing. And then, quietly, when no one's looking, no announcement, no justification, and when their absence is noticed, the energy of the group shifts. Someone says, "Where did they go?" Suddenly, everyone realizes the only person not dragged into the mess was the one who said nothing at all. In both these scenarios, contrast is everything. The louder the noise, the sharper the silence cuts. The one who watches instead of reacts, who delays instead of defends, ends up holding the most influence. Not because they imposed it, but because others gave it to them, sensing their composure. Silence isn't just restraint, it's dominance by exclusion. While others burn their energy proving, the quiet one conserves theirs. While others expose their intentions, the silent reveal nothing. And that nothing becomes everything. The quiet executive doesn't win by speaking the best. She wins by waiting for the moment her voice would carry the most weight. The quiet friend doesn't win the argument. He never enters it. And yet, he walks away with more respect than anyone shouting at the table. This is modern dominance. This is Nietzsche's method, alive and lethal. Not the outdated model of brute strength or endless persuasion, but psychological precision. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't seek validation. It simply is. The loud ones grab attention. The silent ones earn authority. And when the noise fades, only the still voice is remembered. Mastering Nietzsche's dangerous method doesn't begin with speaking. It begins with restraint. The first step is to resist the urge to rebut, especially when your ego is burning. When someone challenges you, mocks you, misinterprets you, stay still. That impulse to defend, to fire back, to prove them wrong, kill it. Because every reaction is an admission of vulnerability. Instead, observe, don't argue. You're not a parrot repeating opinions. You're a predator studying movement, tone, weakness. Every word they say becomes ammunition for later. You collect data, not drama. Then let silence stretch. Don't rush to fill the void. Most people can't tolerate silence. It makes them anxious, exposed. Let them speak themselves into a corner while you stay centered. Silence builds pressure. Let it rise. Let them unravel. And when you do speak, do it like you're pulling a trigger. Your words should be precise, minimal, and final, like closing a door they didn't even realize was open. You don't argue. You deliver. Each sentence must land with weight, not volume. That's what makes words unforgettable. Lastly, embrace unpredictability. Never be easy to read. Be the person whose reactions they can't map. Sometimes you leave the room. Sometimes you stare, saying nothing, and they feel more than if you'd shouted. This unpredictability makes you dangerous, not chaotic, but unreadable. And that is where control lies. Nietzsche's method isn't about overpowering with presence. It's about unsettling through precision. Speak when necessary, react never, observe always. This is how you dominate in silence. Silence, if misunderstood, becomes a mask for cowardice or cruelty. But Nietzsche never meant for it to be a tool of passivity or arrogance. This method, this dangerous quiet, is not about disengaging from the world. It's about choosing your engagements with precision. Silence is not retreat, it is calculated action. It is not an escape from conflict, but a strategic withholding of reaction until the moment is right. Yet, there's a warning buried in this strength power. When misused, becomes isolation. If your silence turns into detachment, if it grows from fear or disdain, you're not powerful. You're just unreachable. The point isn't to become a phantom in the room. It's to become the force that shapes it without needing to shout. Your quiet should guard truth, not spread arrogance. It should make others reflect, not recoil. Nietzsche didn't glorify silence for silence's sake. He revered the strength it took to speak only when necessary. His vision wasn't of tyrants who silenced others, but of rulers of self. Men and women who wielded silence as a reflection of internal mastery, not external intimidation. So use this power carefully. Let your silence be filled with discipline, not pride, with control, not coldness. Because when it is rooted in strength, silence doesn't push others away. It draws the world in, demanding to be understood without ever needing to explain.